Hello and welcome to our next research vlog. My name is Agnieszka Kubal and I'm the PI on the project HuRiEE, who are the humans behind the human rights in Eastern Europe and Russia. In our last vlog, we gave you a little bit of a background on the Helsinki Accords and why it's so important to go back to history to understand the development of human rights as a concept and as a research agenda in Central and Eastern Europe. Today, I want to tell you a little bit more what one of our research assistants has been doing on the project. Hanna Olinik has been in Ukrainian archives digging out information about the Ukrainian Helsinki Group. It was formed in 1976 by 10 members, 8 of them men and 2 women. In this video vlog, who are the humans behind the human rights, we want to share with you the stories of the 3 most important women for the Ukrainian Helsinki Group: Nina Strokata-Karawańska, Oksana Myszko, and Nadia Svitlichna.
Nina Strokata-Karawańska was a microbiologist, civic activist, and the wife of the long-term political prisoner Sviatoslav Karawański. In 1971, 5 years before the establishment of the Ukrainian Helsinki Group, one of the first Ukrainian human rights organizations was formed, the Odessa Public Committee for the Protection of Nina Strokata-Karawańska. She had been arrested for the first time in 1971 for information activities aimed at spreading the word about political repressions in the USSR and advocating for the release of her husband. She was sentenced to 4 years in strict regime labor camps in Mordovia. Advocacy activities in her defense, led by the Ukrainian diaspora, resulted in her admission to the American Society of Microbiologists. It allowed her to receive relevant magazines and newsletters and stay in touch with her research field even in captivity. After serving her sentence, she had to keep living in Kaluga Oblast in Russia under the official administrative surveillance. However, she joined the Ukrainian Helsinki Group in 1976 as one of the founders and, as other members later recalled, almost all the group's documents and appeals had her involvement and had her signature. She renounced her Soviet citizenship back in 1975, and in 1979 she finally got a permission to leave the Soviet Union. She went to the USA, where she continued her human rights work as a member of the external representation of the Ukrainian Helsinki Group.
Oksana Myszko was a political prisoner and a member of the Ukrainian dissident movement. For the first time, she was arrested in 1947, where she was accused that together with her sister Vera, she wanted to assassinate the Mikita Khrushchev, then the first secretary of the Ukrainian Communist Party. She was sentenced to 10 years of Gulag and deported from Ukraine. After returning back from her exile, she was one of the gravity centers around whom the Ukrainian dissident movement was formed. She joined the Ukrainian Helsinki Group in 1976 as one of the founding members when she was 71 years old. After the arrest of the group's leader, Mykola Rudenko, in 1977, she was de facto heading the Ukrainian Helsinki Group, though this was never officially acknowledged. Perhaps it was a reflection of patriarchal culture, or perhaps it was as a way to protect her and protect her identity. Nevertheless, the KGB was very well aware of her role in the Ukrainian Helsinki and human rights movement. Myszko was arrested again in 1980s. At the time she was 76 years old, and she was sentenced to 3 months of the so-called psychiatric treatment, which was quite a common punishment for human rights defenders at that time, she was again moved away from Ukraine to a remote village, Ayan, in Khabarovsk region in Soviet Russia, which is just north of Japan. Yet when she returned to Ukraine, she continued her work. In June 1990, this 85-year-old woman have initiated an establishment of a new group, so-called Helsinki 90. Helsinki 90 was a reinvention of the Ukrainian Helsinki Committee, with the idea of focusing this time just on human rights work in Ukraine without the political wing or the political opposition. It's a bit of an irony of fate that she died in January 1991, just at the eve of the collapse of the Soviet Union. A very, very powerful woman.
Nadia Svetlichna was a philologist, publicist, and human rights activist. She also experienced political imprisonment for her dissident activities, having been arrested in 1972 and sentenced to 4 years in a strict regime labor camp in Mordovia. After serving her sentence, she was refused residence registration and employment, which also created further difficulties with the Soviet legal system. In December 1976, in protest against the arrest and sentences targeting members of the group and other dissidents, she renounced her Soviet citizenship. In her statement, she referred to the USSR as the most powerful and most advanced concentration camp in the world. She was officially considered a member of the group since 1978. However, she had actively participated in collecting information and distributing the group's materials since its creation. In 1978, she managed to get permission to leave the USSR. In the US, she joined the external representation of the group and became the editor of the Herald of Repressions in Ukraine, which regularly and in detail continued to cover human rights violations in Ukraine. At the time, most of the group's leaders in Ukraine were in prison and unable to carry out such activities. She decoded and organized materials on human rights abuses in Ukraine that were smuggled to the West and hosted a program about Ukrainian political prisoners for Radio Liberty for 12 years. Additionally, she worked as a translator at Harvard University.
This vlog presented just 3 profiles and 3 stories of the humans behind the human rights in the historical era of the Ukrainian Helsinki Group. We are very happy that we are able to share with you these powerful and strong figures of women who stood behind the human rights and pursued the human rights agenda. Watch the space and particularly the CEE's website. The address is now on the screen here to follow more of our research vlogs. I'll see you in the next one.